Let's talk about how you need to stop letting your boyfriend manage your money. So the other day, I turned on the TV at a hotel and caught a scene from the sitcom Mike and Molly, where the titular married couple were discussing money. Mike sits at the kitchen table reviewing their finances and explaining to Molly that they need to cut back on spending. And Molly, as a comedic scene demands, of course, resists this, annoyed at the fact that she even has to discuss the couple's finances.
Have a seat.
It's become like an every month thing for you. Anything's better than this. What?
Don't get me wrong, the scene is really fun. I mean, who doesn't love some Melissa McCarthy comedy? But it also struck me as a perfect example of the subtle gendered narrative we have around finances. The stereotype narrative takes several shapes and forms that you've probably seen or heard before. Like women handle the home, men handle the finances. Or women just love spending money, they can't stop shopping. Or even that men are just better at investing. The central underlying thesis to all of these stereotype narratives is that women aren't good with money. I've seen the same sentiment pop up in my own video comments. I've had a good amount of men pop up in my designer brands video with comments like, "This is the problem with women, they spend money on stupid things," or "I'm so glad I'm a man and I don't have to deal with this." As if women are the only ones who engage in reckless spending, overconsumption, and lifestyle inflation. Sadly, that is all of us. Before I dive in though, if you are new here, I'm Cara and I make videos on the intersection of money, media, and intentional living. So if that sounds like your cup of tea, be sure to subscribe, and there is another video essay that you might like that's on a similar topic to this one. It's about the importance of women's financial literacy, and it's called The Dangers of Trad Wife and Stay-at-Home Girlfriend Culture. So go check out that one after you watch this one. Thank you to my patrons on Patreon and those who support me on Buy Me a Coffee for supporting this channel. And thank you also to the sponsor of today's video, Paired. Paired is a relationship care app, which is honestly a perfect thing to talk about in this video about couples' finances. And what makes Paired so cool is that they offer daily couple questions, relationship games, quizzes, exercises, and expert video guidance on all relationship subjects from intimacy to connection to even money. I used the app with my partner and no surprise here, I loved going through the money and finance questions. Paired helped us identify important money questions we hadn't talked about before, like whether we'd allow a partner to support us financially, whether we believe in kids getting allowances, and when was the last time we felt anxious about our money. Using Paired helped draw these answers out of us and basically provided us a safe space so that we could talk about these things that don't typically come up in day-to-day conversation. Beyond helping to facilitate important relationship conversations, Paired also lets you create a timeline of your most important relationship moments, which I think is super cute, and just helps you overall unlock your relationship strengths and growth areas. So if you're interested in trying out Paired, go to my link down below for a 7-day free trial and 25% off Paired Premium so that you can maintain and deepen your connection with your partner. Thank you so much to Paired for sponsoring this video. All right, so returning to this very prevalent idea that women are just not as good at money as men are. And look, I don't believe in any shape or form that this idea is rooted in any kind of natural inherent truth. That being said, I do understand why the notion persists. One, because for the longest time, women weren't allowed to have a lot of financial responsibility. It was only in 1974, when the Equal Credit Opportunity Act passed, that women in the US were even granted the right to open a bank account of their own or finance a house. Therefore, we built our historical conceptions around women's apparent financial skill set in a reality that was oppressive and constraining at the time. It's like wondering why someone would be good at breaking out into dance if they were never allowed to dance as a kid, though Footloose begs to differ. On a more real and historical example, we see the same thing happening with the stereotype that Black Americans can't swim. It's not that more melanin in your skin somehow makes you more susceptible to gravity in the water, but that in the late 19th and early 20th century, municipal and city pools weren't built in Black American communities at the same rate as white American communities. Even more, in the mid-20th century, segregation, either through policy or violence, relegated Black Americans to smaller pools with worse conditions. It's easy to think that history is this insulated thing that is in our past and we don't touch it anymore, but the ripple effects of those policies and those restrictions can oftentimes still be felt today. One of the ripple effects of our historical conception that women are bad with money is that we've built our stories for generations around the same flawed idea. Now when we watch movies or TV shows, we see a similar dynamic play out over and over again, wherein a woman is the source of financial stress and the man is the solver, the one who gets how money works. The narrative feeds into what I'd call the larger infantilization of women in media. In other words, we've historically portrayed women like little kids who are a bit clueless and need help from the more competent man.
The oven is on fire!
Don't get excited. You got any salt?
Oh, I don't use salt, just ground pepper and oregano.
Ground pepper.
Now, I think we have made huge strides in upending, or at the very least questioning, this narrative. But we still see it slip in more subtly in our culture, whether it's in media or our day-to-day lives. And like most things that pervade culture, as we grow up, we internalize these messages. Which brings us back to the topic of financial decision-making within a relationship. I've seen many videos online of women who playfully admit that their boyfriends or husbands are managing their money, or that they defer to their significant other for all of their financial advice. It's often shared as either a point of pride or an amusing anecdote.
I don't know what's going on, and I simply don't want to know.
But in my opinion, these are just a continuation of the infantilization story where we tell ourselves that we as women aren't good with money. I never learned it, it's just not my thing, so, I let him deal with it. He seems to know what he's doing. I've heard my friends and coworkers say this exact same thing, and they are smart, educated women who make their own money, but they still feel incompetent when it comes to their financial skills. So they automatically defer to their male partners instead of trying to learn about managing finances themselves. I'll be honest, a few times it has been really difficult to listen to my friends or coworkers talk about what their male partner's investing strategies are, because they are like day trading and looking at stocks on Reddit, and it makes me want to pull my hair out. Because one, day trading and chasing meme stocks is a terrible way to build wealth over time. It's actually a great way to lose money. Personally, I am a low-cost index fund girly all the way. But also because I feel like this is such good evidence of the confidence gap that we tend to see between men and women. Men typically feel more comfortable with self-promotion. They tend to rank their performance higher than women in self-assessments, despite women actually being closer to the truth than the men who overrated their performance. And I think we're seeing the same thing when men who might have just as little experience in personal finance as their female partners assume the role of the investor in the relationship, because the overarching narrative of our culture is that he'll be inherently better at it and he feels so too. In 2009, the famous Nigerian author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie discussed the concept of the single story problem.
The single story creates stereotypes, and the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story.
And to me, this is the problem that we are dealing with, a single story that has become the only story. But I think we're ready for and already starting to embrace an expanded set of stories around women's relationship with money, one in which we recognize that statistically, women perform better with investments due to patience and lower risk tolerance compared to men. One where we realize that there are phenomenal free resources online these days to learn about personal finance for both men and women. And we internalize that financial acumen isn't a gendered experience. Okay, so that sounds all fine and dandy, but what does that actually look like in practice? If you're someone who always defers to your partner for finances, or you're the partner that's always deferred to, what should you do? And why does any of this actually matter? Let's start with that last one, because I'm guessing, based on the comments that I got from my trad wife and stay-at-home girlfriend video, that there are gonna be a lot of people commenting on this video saying, what is so wrong about your partner overseeing your finances, especially in marriage? I mean, shouldn't that be a team? And don't teams consist of people who bring their unique talents to the table? It's like if I'm better at washing dishes and my partner is just better at cooking. And look, I get that perspective, and I actually think that for most aspects of a relationship or domestic life, that perspective applies very, very nicely. But I think that finances are different. Money makes the world go round has some truth to it, in that money plays a significant role in how we're able to live our lives. Therefore, it's critical for every adult to understand how their money works. One of my absolute favorite personal finance creators, Ramit Sethi, has this incredible take from the TSC podcast. I'll link Ramit Sethi's channel down below, because watching his financial audits with people is so enlightening and educational. But here is his take on couples' finances from the podcast.
But I do think that money, unlike washing the dishes or something like that, is something that both partners should have at least some skin in the game on. Especially in couples where there's one person who's more sophisticated about money or more experienced, maybe is a higher earner, it's very easy for them to become the money person. But I told my wife, I don't want to be the money person in this relationship for a couple of reasons. One day, I'm not going to be here. I might get hit by a bus and you have to figure out how this money thing works. That's number one. And then number two, there's going to be a considerable amount of wealth here. I want you to feel comfortable to be a good steward of this money. It's like if the two of us go kayaking or something, you don't want to be the only one rowing. Both of you rowing in the same direction makes it more fun. You have some skin in the game and you're going towards a direction both of you want to go. And when I explained it like that, my wife was totally in. Like, yeah, okay.
So there's this micro trend on TikTok where women in particular talk about how they can turn off their brain when they're with their partner.
He does everything, and I'm just kind of like there for the aesthetics.
And it's kind of sweet because I do think being able to foster peace, comfort, and trust is important in a relationship. Every member of a partnership should feel like they can occasionally turn off their brain around their person. But I push back on this idea of brain off, aesthetics only when it comes to financial decision making and learning about your money, because the stats are sobering. For the purpose of this video, we'll ignore the possibility of financial abuse altogether, even though that is an incredibly serious reality for many people who are fully financially dependent on their partner. If you do want to learn more about that, you can check out my video on the dangers of trad wife and stay-at-home girlfriend culture, where I talked a bit more about it. But for now, we'll talk about the other kinds of stats, like how women have longer life expectancies than men. So in heterosexual relationships, women will likely take on the finances after their partner passes. Nearly 8 in 10 women will end up the sole financial decision maker for their household, often for 2 decades or more. When UBS surveyed hundreds of divorced and widowed women about the financial challenges they faced on their own, a whopping 98% of them urged other women to become more involved in long-term financial decisions early on. Interestingly, amongst the generations, millennial women surveyed were the most willing to leave investing and financial planning decisions to their husbands. And to be clear, I'm not trying to paint a picture where women aren't involved in any kind of personal finance. Actually, the stats follow the historical narrative, wherein men are more involved in long-term financial decisions like investing, but women are more involved in day-to-day financial planning like budgeting for groceries. By the way, I wasn't able to find as much research conducted on same-sex relationships, but if the trends follow the domestic splits of same-sex relationships, then I think it's fair to guess that the split is more even for financial planning responsibility. But no matter what your relationship looks like, the crux of the issue to me is that every member of a relationship should be involved in all aspects of financial decision making, both the long-term and the short-term. The stereotyped roles for women and money aren't good for a woman's ability to understand how the household can generate wealth over time, or how to handle that wealth if left alone due to death or divorce. And the same goes for men. The stereotyped roles for men and money aren't good for a man's ability to understand the household's cash flow or how to maintain a monthly budget. Most of us didn't learn about money growing up, even within the stereotype spheres that our gender would suggest we're good at. That's why it is so important to dive into educational resources, and there are so many great free ones out there online these days for financial literacy, from Khan Academy to Investopedia. I also highly recommend checking out books from your local library, like The Psychology of Money and The Bogglehead's Guide to Investing. And for couples, I really think open communication is key. And I know that sounds like the most basic, generic relationship advice you can give, but I think it's especially applicable here because money is still so taboo to talk about. Even me, who loves talking about money, when my partner and I went through those paired money questions, I felt kind of weird because these were things that we hadn't gone into depth about. But I really think it's those kinds of conversations that help open the door to shared financial responsibility and learning. Financial advisors can also be useful at times, though I personally prefer to learn this stuff on my own. But if you do go with a financial advisor, I highly recommend going with a fee-based one instead of a percentage-based one. But bottom line, stop letting your boyfriend manage your money. Stop letting your husband manage your money. Stop letting your girlfriend or your wife manage your money. It is just too important of a subject to not be involved in. But what do you think? Are you someone who wants to be involved in your own financial decisions, or do you prefer having a partner handle it for you? Let me know in the comments below and what you'd like to see me cover next. If you like this video essay and you want to see more, check out this one on how company loyalty keeps you poor, or this one about multi-level marketing schemes. Thank you so much for watching, for subscribing, and for nerding out with me on money and pop culture. I really appreciate it, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.